Hello everyone, Friday, October 23rd, let's talk PlayStation. I want to kick this one off with a news story that nobody's talking about, but Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is finally coming to PlayStation 3. There's an Amazon.com listing, it's also listed on Gamefly. No official confirmation, no news websites reporting this, but essentially that tells me it's probably going to come, especially since 360 got the San Andreas release how many months ago now at this point, and the PS2 Classic for the game is removed from the PlayStation Store, I believe. Just Europe or just North America, I forget which location it was removed from or whatever, but I believe you can still buy it in one region. Either way, this probably means it's coming, which, thank God. I mean, I'm the only one that probably cares about this because I want to replay that game with trophies, but that was my little rant a long time ago, like, why is it only coming to 360 and not PS3? So now, it's coming to PS3. Anyway, okay, let's get into our next news story. Firmware 3.1, basically, for PlayStation 4 came out kind of out of nowhere this past week. Not a whole lot of features. The two big notable changes, at least, I'm sure there's software stability in there, of course, but the one is you get a bunch of new stickers, so stickers for, like, God of War 3 and stuff for your messages and whatnot, like, that's kind of whatever, but the big one is following, so you can now follow verified PSN accounts. So, a verified PSN account is typically going to be a game developer, a game studio, something like that, Sony employees. So you can actually go to the following section right now. You can go to, like, friends and go to follow, and there's actually a suggestion page where you can follow a whole bunch of people. You can go to Reddit, or I believe DualShockers had a good article about this, where there's a bunch of people that you can follow in the industry, which is pretty interesting. And so some people want to know what following actually does. So when you follow somebody, in the what's new sort of section, like, you're going to get updates from them basically when they're playing games. So that's kind of cool. I've always wanted a following system on PSN. This isn't really what I wanted, not just only verified accounts. I wish everybody could follow everybody, including the whole friend system, kind of like on Xbox One, but either way, kind of cool. So Volume, that game that was done by Mike Bithell, that's going to be getting a little expansion that is going to be only available, at least at first, with PlayStation VR. So that's kind of a new thing for PSVR. We're always talking about when PSVR comes out, the big thing is we want to see a lot of content for it and stuff like that. So Volume, the add-on for Volume is going to have like 30 exclusive levels or something, which is nice to hear. I mean, I think the good news here is that we want to hear more stuff about what we're going to be able to play on PlayStation VR, right? We want to hear that the price of this thing is going to be justified, even though we don't know what the price is, but we're sure that it's going to be pretty expensive, which goes into our next news story, which is Until Dawn. Just last week we talked about Until Dawn and the possibility of a sequel. Well, the developer Supermassive Games did a little Reddit AMA talking about what they're working on, the possibilities again of another Until Dawn or something like that. They said they said that what they're working on currently, what they'll be releasing next, they'll be super stoked. But apparently there is inside sources or whatnot of a virtual reality, a PSVR like sort of DLC for Until Dawn that will come out. So a source confirmed this to Destructoid apparently, and apparently it's called Until Dawn Rush of Blood, kind of an on-rails shooter basically. That this person that has actually played it said that it's on rails. It does have shooting mechanics. Your typical jump scares seemed kind of closed off because, well, it is on rails, but he's hoping that it's padded with a lot more content and stuff, but essentially this is more than likely a real thing, which is good because Until Dawn is certainly the kind of game that would be very beneficial to an application such as virtual reality. And like I just said how many minutes ago, we want more content for VR that justifies the purchase of a PlayStation VR. And 2015 is almost over. And Sony said we've got that first half of 2016 that is going to be seeing the release of VR. So we're going to, we're really kind of ramping up here. It seems like every week we're talking about PSVR, and that is good to know, because as we're getting closer, we want to get more news about it. Also, PlayStation 4 price cut is pretty much official across the board, not just Japan, not just North America. Now it's also hitting the UK, multiple countries in Europe, Australia, I believe. So in the UK, you can now get it for 300 British pounds sterling. Europe, I believe, 350 euros, if I'm not mistaken. Australia, you can now get a PS4 for 475 Australian dollars. So basically, yeah, price cut confirmed across the board. If it isn't in your area yet, I'm sure it'll happen before the end of the year. which is good because Sony's still consistently doing very well. I mean, the September NPDs just came out, and they've once again taken #1. Not only #1 in terms of hardware, but they're also the leading platform for multiple third-party games, including Metal Gear Solid, which not really surprising there, but also NBA and I believe Madden or something. I don't remember the press release exactly, but good news all around for Sony. So for our next two news stories, they're not specifically just PlayStation, but they're one of those stories that are like a broader aspect of the gaming industry, and they're certainly very important to talk about. So Electronic Arts COO Peter Moore recently was discussing a little bit about remasters, and he had this interesting quote I want to talk to you guys about. Remakes, because of who we are in this broad portfolio of intellectual property, you add all that together, I don't know where we find the time to do remakes. For a lot of companies, remakes are a way to drive revenue. It's sub-cost, it's an IP that's there, you can remaster, and that's great. We don't do that here. I don't think that's ever been in our culture. In the old days, backwards compatibility was to convince your mom to buy the new console. Not that you were ever going to use it. Once you got it, those things went into the drawer or on eBay. But what Peter's basically saying is that, at least for EA, don't expect remasters, ports, or anything like that anytime soon. HD collections, things like that of the sort, which has been a very popular trend this console generation, and for the great reasons that he mentioned. It's an IP that works, that's well known, that people want to buy, and it is sub-cost. It's nowhere near the same cost as actually developing a completely new IP from the ground up. But this is one of the very few EA quotes recently, one of the very few EA things that really is nice to hear, that they want to create new games, they want to create new IPs, new content, they want to go forward, which would certainly, you hear that and you'd start to get a little bit cynical about the things that EA is currently doing in terms of either, the games that they're funding or how they're going about funding them, and microtransactions and all that other cynical bullshit. But this one little news story is pretty good. It's because EA is a major publisher, so it's nice to see that they aren't necessarily trying to jam so many remasters and things like that out every 2-3 months, where it seems like a lot of other developers and publishers are trying to do recently. So Call of Duty Black Ops 3, we haven't really talked about this much on LTPS, but one big news story that came out a while ago about that in particular was that the PS3 and 360 versions of the game, last generation versions, weren't going to have a campaign of the game. So basically there was going to be no single player. It's going to be just the multiplayer of that game. Big news story. We didn't really talk about that though, just I didn't find a whole lot of time or whatever for that particular week that news story broke out. But another interesting detail that came out about the game recently is that the developers commented saying that the game is going to be running at 30 frames per second. Which I believe is the first time that the PS3 and 360 are getting a Call of Duty that's running at 30 frames per second. Call of Duty on PS3 and 360 has always been 60 frames per second. So now you've got a Call of Duty release, which of course is even if you don't like Call of Duty, it's nothing to scoff about. It's always a big major release. It makes a lot of money. So you got a big major release on the system, on those consoles that are now going to be stripped of like two major things, which is one, the whole gosh darn single player campaign is gone, and now 60 frames per second, which has always been a pretty important part of Call of Duty if you're if you want to be competitive at it and whatnot. Like, I don't even need to explain why 60 frames is certainly important to a shooter, and especially something like Call of Duty where it's really fast and twitch paced and things like that. So this kind of goes into a little bit of a discussion of which a few people have asked me regarding like a Ryan on Gaming topic, which is how long does the last generation have? When are developers going to fully transition over and stop making PS3 and 360 games? And my initial sort of take on that has always been there's still going to be some pretty healthy crossover, because the jump from PS4 to PS3, the jump from 360 to X1, certainly a very big jump, but it wasn't something like PS2 to PS3. It wasn't something like PS1 to PS2. Those are pretty big, substantial jumps, and it wasn't that easy for developers to create a game that sort of lived comfortably on both systems, because it was just such a bigger leap in terms of power. And yes, PS3 to PS4 is a very big leap in power, but it was also, my take was, there would still be healthy crossover because PS3 and 360 were on the market for so long. People are probably going to continue using those platforms because they've built so many friends on the online system, the online connectivity of those systems. They've got all those digital purchases still living on those systems. Specifically for the Sony side, online play is still free on PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 still has support to download PS1 classics, PS2 classics. There's a lot of great reasons why I feel PS3 is still going to basically still have a lot of support left in it and still stay healthy on the market. But nowadays it really doesn't seem like that's the case. Now, of course, yeah, PlayStation 4 and X1 are coming up on 2 years old now at this point, so you would expect the healthy crossover that I'm referring to finally disappear, and that is basically the case right now. It is starting to disappear. You can see that a major game like Call of Duty still has to find a release on PS3 and 360 because those are there's still 160 million systems between PS3 and 360 combined, basically. So that's still a lot of sales you can do. If the cost of making Call of Duty Black Ops 3 on PS3 and 360 is less than the amount of copies you're going to sell in terms of the revenue and all that, like, it's clearly still worth doing. But you look at sort of the routes they've taken, which is, I'll just take out the single player campaign at this point. It's not even worth it. The game has just gotten to the point now where we're doing too many things graphically intensive for the game. We're jamming too much content into the game. We have to lower the frame rate now, which has always been a sort of a topic, heated topic in terms of the PS4 and X1 recently, with the resolution and frame rate, and what people don't understand about consoles is that they're closed boxes. So when a developer chooses to do 30 frames per second, it's not because the console can't do it. That's because the developer has chosen to either increase graphical fidelity or do more on-screen enemies or something like that, right? Something to make the game better in compensation of the frame rate. They could always do 60 frames. It's just a matter of the developer has chosen not to do 60 frames because they want to add extra stuff. So now it's gotten to the point where the foundation of the game has to be 60. Well, I mean, the foundation of the game is going to be what it is on PS4 and X1, but now for it to even work on PS3 and 360, it has to cut the frame rate. So it's just gotten to the point now where, like, in the next year, you are definitely going to see a drastic drop in PS3 and 360 releases. So when you have all these major releases on PS3 and 360 having huge drawbacks to them and all these big features missing out of the games, really kind of gives people more of a reason to jump into PS4 and X1 if they haven't done so already, which a lot of people have at this point, because you can look at the numbers every single week on VG charts or something. 360 and PS3 sales have really tapered off. The games for them have really tapered off in terms of sales, so that's just where we're at. We are finally going there. So next year, I think, is going to be a really, really slow year for PS3 and 360. I wouldn't expect them to last much longer. Anyway, those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. Paris Games Week. Let's not forget this. So Sony's having, on the 27th, so this Tuesday, their press conference for Paris Games Week. So they will be live streaming it a number of places, as I believe the PlayStation blog is going to have a link to it. You can watch it directly on Twitch, on your PS4 directly. You can go to the event center to check it out. But I suggest you all keep your eyes peeled. Of course, this channel, PlayStation channel, I do have off of work Tuesday, so you better believe I'm going to be watching that thing, and I'll be uploading a video shortly after the conference, kind of recapping it and my impressions and everything, and we'll just have a good old time, and hopefully there'll be some good stuff coming out of it. So Paris Games Week, I would hope that we see something from Quantic Dream. I really hope they finally show us something, because I'm really excited for what they have in store. Other than that, the Rhino gaming topic for the past week was gaming petitions and online campaigns, so things like Better PSN, or ridiculous petitions where it's like, oh, keep, Final Fantasy 13 away from 360 or whatever. You remember that crazy petition a while ago. Things like that. Do those things actually work? That was the discussion there. And also, the new part for Jack is out. The game's getting harder and harder, so trust me, it's getting harder and harder for you to watch, probably because I'm dying left and right. Part 15, actually, is really, really bad. Like, I was dying a lot, so I really hope at that point you're just watching for the commentary and the things I have to say, because that's all I got. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys next Friday.